Coming up on this week's edition of the Mindset Podcast, episode 170, we have a little bit of a Hospital Porters Against the New World Order edition, as I'm joined by Trevor and Ben. But what a show we've got lined up for you today. We talk about the government shutdown and taxes, Jesse Ventura, the EDL, vaccines, immigration, and so much more. Here's the music.
I bid you welcome.
This is BBC News from BBC World.
This is an NBC News special report.
This is a CBS News special report. Hello, a very good morning. You're watching BBC News with Carrie Gracie and Simon McCoy.
From ITN News at 10.
Hello, good evening, good morning, good afternoon, wherever you may be around this wild, wacky, and sometimes disturbing world of ours. This is the Mindset Podcast, episode 170. I'm Gareth in Los Angeles, California, and joining me a mere 5,000 miles away from Oxfordshire in England, the one, the only, the returning Ben Emlyn-Jones. Hello, Ben.
Hello, Gareth. 5,000 miles is beer, I suppose.
Welcome back, man.
I've missed you guys. Yeah, I've been away, what, two weeks?
2 weeks.
Seems ages. I've been doing so much.
Yeah, you're a busy man.
I certainly am. I've been travelling the world and seeking out new life and new civilizations. I've been boldly going where no man has gone before.
Well, no.
That's not actually true. I've been to Huddersfield in West Yorkshire, to the Ex-Politics Conference, and I've been to the Probe Conference in St Anne's, Lancashire.
Yeah, so when you were on about 2 weeks ago, you mentioned you were going to these two conferences, and I'm going to ask you about them in depth in a moment or two so we can get your take on how it went, who was there, what happened, the whole deal. But before we do that, let's shoot straight over the Atlantic Ocean and go up north, and say hello to Trevor Murray in Canada. Hey, Trevor.
Good morning, all.
Good morning.
Hi, Trevor.
I'm here eating my toast.
Toast?
Warming up. It's cold up here. Holy shit.
Is it starting to get chilly up there now?
Oh, yeah. I turned the furnace on this morning when I got up.
No shit. Wow.
Yeah. You know what's funny, though? My parents, they live out in Michigan, and it's 80 Fahrenheit out there.
Yeah.
It's like, shit. Like, I'm up right above Montana here, so we're pretty cold.
Wow. Well, yesterday here in Southern California was an absolutely beautiful day, dude. Beautiful. It was about 78 degrees. It was perfect weather, not a cloud in the sky, T-shirt and shorts, flip-flops, the whole deal.
See, now I know why the Americans drew the border where they wanted. They said, holy shit, like it's 80 here. It's only 50 degrees.
Weather, yeah. They drew it via weather lines.
They said, well, the weather changes right there. So that's, it was sunny. It's been sunny. But yeah, it's really starting to feel. We had snow on the ground actually in the house, outside the house.
Right. So. Holy shit! Yeah. So Trevor,
the Indians call it the medicine line, the border, the U.S.-Canada border, because the Indians, the idea of this sort of land border was completely unknown to them. They had much more sort of a different concept of territory, but they used to notice that the U.S. cavalry used to stop and wouldn't go any further when they were chasing them. So the reason is because they crossed over into Canada.
Ah, right.
Yeah.
Didn't know that. Yeah, because you imagine how strange that must be. You know, you have no concept of borders and lines, and you can't even comprehend it because it's not a part of your culture or your worldview. And then suddenly people say, no. There's an imaginary line right here, and on this side this is our land, and on that side it's your land.
Yeah, it's very strange.
They must have been like, "What the fuck are you talking about, pal? Get out of here!"
I know. I mean, the Indians
when you look at native.
Sorry, Trevor.
Go ahead, Trevor.
I was going to say, like when you look at maps of Canada and U.S. It's very like there are like big amoebas looking like they had kind of borders, but not really. It was just kind of like, well, this is our area. This is the primo land to live in, and they didn't. There's just kind of
they had like territories, but the borders between one territory and another wasn't a distinct line.
Right,
it was
very
like
blurry.
a demilitarized zone, which is very, very vague, and it's very, very sort of like fuzzy. And there was a sort of like sort of no man's land around each territory, which was just basically free for all. You could go anywhere. They're a neutral territory.
Yeah, like the territory was like just the geography of the land, like up Ontario, well, even Ontario and Alberta, very cold, harsh climates, and then you get like further south, like Texas and whatnot. Like, yeah, it was just basically it was no defined border, but we lived in this area that because we're climatized to it, I suppose.
Yeah.
I mean, I was looking at the Google Street View of the U.S.-Mexican border, and it was really quite remarkable. It's like it looks like the Berlin Wall.
It's very it's very distinct, Ben. I've been there many times. It's surreal, really, because you can be in San Diego in a nice, beautiful suburban neighborhood. Very, very pretty and clean and beautiful, and you can stand on a hill and look over the border, and it's like a demilitarized zone. It's like all fucking shacks, and it's and then you wonder, no wonder these guys are hopping fences to get the fuck out of there.
Yeah,
you know what I mean? It's like if I was born and raised over there, the first thing I would do would hop that fucking fence. I'm gonna get me the fuck out of here.
Well, exactly. I mean, this is. I think we're going to come onto this hopefully later, but I mean, this whole thing about immigration is based on. I think is being used to justify more and more controls, like this massive militarized fence along the borders of this country. I call it the new Iron Curtain.
Everyone, well, not everyone, of course, but in the United States, the prevailing view is, we have to be tough on immigration. We have to stop illegal immigration. We have to stop, and it's like, you're treating you're not treating the symptoms. Why are these people leaving their homeland?
Exactly, for the weather? Yeah, they're coming to Britain for the weather?
They're not leaving because, hey, I'm kind of bored, or it's Saturday afternoon, there's nothing going on, let's leave. I mean, they're leaving because they have to, because they cannot live the life they want to live where they're living, whether it's corruption or fucking, or the economy's to shit, or extreme poverty, or all of the above.
Well, soon Americans are going to be jumping over that to get into Mexico, I think.
Well, maybe so. Maybe
that's the idea. Maybe then they'll. Maybe that's how they'll bring in the next stage of the database state. They've used it. They've used it to try and catch Mexicans in Britain. Maybe in the States, maybe they'll use it to catch Americans in Mexico. So either way, you have to go on the database.
But no, I mean, I'm not. I mean, I'm not against illegal immigration. I'm not, because if I was in their position, I'd do the exact same thing.
Exactly.
I'd be like, I'm out of here. Fuck that. Later.
Yeah, I know. I mean, really. I mean, there's the potential exists in this world for a prosperous lifestyle for everybody who lives here. There's no doubt about it. Any poverty is engineered. It's deliberate.
Right.
It's deliberate deprivation, which is created to create need, to create want, to create dependence on the state.
Right.
And if that force was removed, then we could all live a decent lifestyle.
Well, it all comes down to hierarchical power structures, right? The people at the top of the pyramid, they're so entrenched in their power and their wealth. It's something that they absolutely do not want to lose. Even if it's just, 3% of their overall power and wealth, there's no fucking way they're going to give that up. So they're going to fight tooth and nail to keep the status quo in place. And there has to be vast amounts of poor people to support their tiny their amount of wealth.
It's a very dependent class.
It is.
Make them dependent. I just had a debate with a girl this week on immigration, and she was calling them dirty, fucking, nasty Mexicans. I was being real. I just said, hey, I don't believe any human's illegal. Right. And she was going on about this stuff, and I said, well, how do you think the natives really felt when Europeans started coming over here?
Exactly.
I feel very humble when I speak to natives, and I feel, it wasn't me who took over the land, but, I don't, I think they must look at me and go, fuck, this bastard, why isn't he speaking our language? Why isn't he, why don't they, use our way of living? So I think it's very ignorant of people in Canada and the U.S. I hear them saying, "Oh, those natives." Well, we have a real bad native problem here with poverty. It's a very dependent class because the government has – I don't know about the states, Gareth, but here they don't pay any taxes. They have like when I worked in a retail stores, they'd come in and they'd hand your card. And, they don't pay taxes on anything, and Canada's heavily taxed. So
what do you mean they don't pay like income tax? You mean
no? They don't pay any tax whatsoever. So there's no taxes. They're basically here's your land, like the reservations,
right.
And when they would come in, like they would pay like if an item was $100 in Canada with tax, it's $115.
Okay,
because there's 15%. But they wouldn't pay that 15%. They just pay for – like they have to pay for the product, but they get that money back because the reserves – just the government just keeps pouring.
So they go in there, right, and they buy – say it's $115 with tax included. They pay the $115, but then they get that back.
No, how
does that work?
It's been a while since I worked in retail. I know that they wouldn't pay any tax. They maybe it just came off a card. Maybe it was just the card. I did have to. It was a bit of a process too. You had to register you type everything in, and I mean, this is going back 20 years ago.
Right.
But
so when one of these immigrants would come in, you'd be like, oh god, here we fucking go. Now I gotta enter all this bullshit and jump through fucking hoops to deal with this maniac. So you'd hate it, right?
I didn't like it
because not because you're against immigration or anything. It's just that your job suddenly becomes 50 times fucking harder when they show up.
Yeah. Oh, this was natives though, like First Nations people.
Right.
I don't know about immigrants. They had to pay all the pay the extortion. Yeah. So anyway, the immigration debates, I'm like, look, to me, they're just imaginary lines. I believe that no human is illegal. So I'm like, who's gonna in Canada? We have a lot of Jamaicans that come here, and they pick the corn and they pick the tobacco in the summertime. Like in Ontario, it's be almost 100 degrees with humidity.
Yeah.
And for $9 an hour,
they do it.
They come up here. They do it for 4 months. Same with Mexicans. They come here and like people complain. I'm like, well, are you going to go pick the corn and tobacco? Like, really? Like people are. I'm like, are they? What jobs are they taking?
Well, that's the thing, dude. When you've got
what they'll
nothing,
do is, what's happening at the moment is in many countries in the West that now immigration is being used in this way because they will do things like when an immigrant comes into the country, they'll put them up in some posh hotel somewhere, and then they'll just coincidentally news reporters turn up, and they do a story on it. And I've noticed this happen several times. These events happen quite regularly now, and what it's being used for, it seems to be used. There's people now who are demanding certain policies from the government, which the government are all too happy to agree to, which they would never have agreed to if it hadn't been for this issue. For instance, entitlement cards for the National Health Service, and more and more ID checks. I mean, there was a BBC report on how there are more illegal immigrants in Britain now than the entire population of Iceland. And then there's a comment underneath saying, why can't they just put everyone on a database with your fingerprints?
Oh, God.
And
so you can't even breathe without permission from the state, without showing without entitlement. And this is exactly what the manipulators of this situation want to hear.
Oh, that's ridiculous.
When people start calling for these things, this is why they're doing it.
Like what are these? What are the jobs these people doing? Come on, they're doing this. They're doing. They're picking our fruits and vegetables,
right? But you got to think,
and they're probably strippers and things too. I mean, they're no. I mean, I'm just thinking they're doing jobs that people. You would think that some people think that they're coming in here doing like they're getting $250,000 a year to be some IBM executive. No, they're.
Right, but Trevor, these people are doing these jobs not because it's their vocation, and not because they're like, oh, when I grow up, I want to pick fruit, or this is what I want to do. They're doing it out of necessity. They're doing it to fucking live.
Exactly.
Well,
not because they want to.
Are actually in the HPS, like me and Trevor. I was. A lot of them are doing jobs like that, or they're domestics in hospitals and things like that. They're working in public services, doing ancillary work, which is exactly what they did in Saudi Arabia, because Filipinos seem to be used in the National Health Service in Britain an awful lot now. It seems to be a kind of Filipino thing.
Yeah, same
actually,
over here
most
too.
of the people I work with are Filipino.
Same over here too.
The machines that I'm supposed to run when I'm depending on whatever department I'm in, it's a lot of time. I go, hey, why is this in Spanish? The Filipino people said because I can read it better than English.
Yeah, and there's some good guys actually. I had a shift part when I was a theatre porter called Joey, who's a Filipino guy, and I got on really well. I really missed him actually when I got transferred out. He was my shift partner in theatres, and I reckon that probably about 40% of the porters are Filipino. Certainly, the native porters are a minority now. I mean, they're probably less than 35% of hospital porters are native Britons.
Yeah.
That didn't bother me. I mean, I think the camaraderie of the hospital portering service, I don't know if it's the same in Canada. I hope it is. I think the camaraderie of the service actually overrode any national or racial tensions that existed between people.
Yeah, I always ask the Filipino people about their homeland, like what's it like, and the women they're forever bringing me in food. I'm like, no wonder why I weigh 220.
Oh God, they do, don't they? They do.
Oh, they bring in. They go, don't. They look at me and go, how do you eat so much cheese? And I said, I love cheese. I'm Canadian. We love it. I'll ask them a lot. Like a fella I worked with up in northern Alberta, his name was Jesse, and he'd tell me the history of Filipinos. It was just all the
It's the same over here too. There's a lot of medical people are Filipino.
Well, they really can cook. I mean, the Filipinos are famous for being cooks. Actually, they're often,
let me bring in
find them on cruise ships and things.
Let me just bring in one more point on this, and then we'll move on from the immigration thing. Trevor was mentioning that these people, they 100-degree heat, they're out there picking for 12 hours a day, and it's the same over here too. The harvest and the same thing. The Mexicans come up from down south or wherever they live, and they pick in crazy weather, and it's horrific conditions. They don't get paid much and all that. So you got to figure, if you're out there 8 to 12 hours a day picking all this bullshit, bent over, your back is going to be in agonies, right, doing this shit for a couple of bucks a day, and you're doing that, right? I mean, and that's like slave labor. But think of this: if they're coming if it's that bad here for them to work and survive, what the fuck is it like in their own country?
Exactly.
What the fuck is it? I mean, if this kind of, for pennies, back-breaking work, 8 to 12 hours a day, I mean, physical, crazy hard work in brutal weather, if that is a good thing for them, how fucking bad must it be where they're coming from? It must be a nightmare.
I've never done a job like that. A friend of mine picked grapes for a summer once, and he said it was awful.
I don't doubt it.
You're out there for 8 to 10 hours and more, and he goes, well, the first time he did, he goes, well, where the hell do I go to the bathroom? You got freaking grape fields here, and you got 200 people.
Yeah.
I mean, there's just little things like that. Like,
it's terrible, I mean,
and if you got caught eating grapes, oh, shit.
So, I mean, it's just to go through that fucking nightmare existence for, like, pittance, for hardly any money, and that's better than where you were? I mean, what does that say about your country of origin?
It's rather like, it reminds me of George Orwell's Down and Out book, which is really quite shocking to read. Because he was in Paris and London. He went, but he used to do all the dirtiest, lowest jobs and things like that.
Yeah,
and he was homeless for a while in London and stuff like that. And it's absolutely unbelievable what he talks about by modern standards.
Unbelievable. All right, guys, let's change gears a little bit here. Now the government shutdown is still in full effect over here in the U.S., and I have a couple of clips here which tie into it. The first one, I was hoping Joe was going to be here today, but unfortunately Joe Dunn couldn't make it today. But I do have a clip that I was hoping to get Joe's take on. But as Trevor is also an avid outdoorsman, maybe he can give us a little bit of a take on this also. And this is in regard to, as the government is effectively shut down in the United States, public parks and recreational areas are also shut down. So have a listen to this clip, and then we'll get everyone's point of view on this.
Government shutdown in Southern California is already feeling the effects. National parks and tourist spots are being closed to the public. Eyewitness News reporter Sid Garcia is live in the Angeles National Forest, where gates are locked and picnic areas have been closed off. Sid?
But it doesn't necessarily mean, David, that you can't drive up and enjoy them. You just simply can't pull in and park. Hundreds of national parks and recreation areas are closed across the country, but that doesn't necessarily mean you don't have access. These signs are posted at all 401 national parks and recreation areas across the country. Out of the more than 21,000 National Park Service employees, around 3,700 will remain on the job. They include park police and firefighters. The rest will be furloughed. What does this mean to you? The campgrounds and picnic areas in the Angeles National Forest are closed.
I know that there's a lot of people with kids that those kids need a place to run around. So that's who I feel sorry for, is people with kids. So that's the way it is.
At the Santa Monica Mountains National Recreation Area, the entrance was padlocked. We did spot some visitors who made their way around the gate. Hikers found a scenic alternative at nearby Carbon Canyon State Park. The hikers we talked to had strong opinions about the government shutdown that closed the national parks.
Just think it's a disgrace. There has to be a way where civil people, both on the right and the left, Republicans and Democrats, can come together and solve this.
I think both parties are at fault at this. This is just ridiculous to think that mature people can't figure this out and get something negotiated. Business people do it all the time. They should be able to figure it out.
The National Park Service's contingency plan includes having campers out within 24 hours of the closure. But according to its website, there's no information on how to enforce the closures and keep visitors out. Here in Southern California, there are a number of state and county parks for you to enjoy.
Yeah, it was awesome. It was really good. The views are amazing, and yeah, I had a great hike. It was cool.
Now, the shutdown will have an economic impact. For example, one gas station employee was telling me down in La Cañada and Flint Ridge, she's noticed business was slower than the shutdown. Her big concern, how much slower will business be this weekend? Reporting live from the Angeles National Forest, I'm Sid Garcia, ABC 7 Eyewitness News.
Thank you, Sid.
So hikers and people, outdoors people who want to get out and about on the weekend or whatever, they're being affected by this because, where they could drive up and park and then just go hiking into the mountains or whatever, all the parking lots and everything where they would usually go are all padlocked up and locked, so they can't get in there. What are your thoughts on this, Trevor? I mean, I know that in Canada you guys are not dealing with this, but maybe you have an opinion on this.
Yeah, I've been following this because I am. My business is Bigfoot Mountain Survival Gear, so I'm always out in the mountains, and so I'm reviewing this story, and I'm just like, park your car, walk around. I mean, they don't have a chain until they put a 15-foot high fence
all around the wilderness.
Mind you, I was wondering where there's some kind of giant tarp over the Grand Canyon or something.
I know, right?
Like how you can't see it from the air now.
Yeah.
But, no, and I listen really to the details of the mainstream media and how they interview people, and they show the woman, she was like all about the children,
right?
And then the other guy, he was like, they should be able, he's saying the Democrats and Republicans, they should work together. Then the third guy's coming from a capitalist point of view, saying, business can work it out. Why can't the government? So
right.
I really pay attention to the media in the sense of who they're bringing on. Who are they interviewing? They probably interview 100 people and go, okay, we want to get for the children.
Yeah, they pick and choose.
Where are they going to play? And, they get basically a left person and a right person's view on it.
Right.
And, I'm like, I think it's a joke too. People are like, oh my God, I can't go in the park. I'm like, just park. Park along the highway. Then I have to laugh, and I don't laugh, but then I go, this is government screwing things over, because I kind of agree with the last guy going, business can work it out. See now, and then that gas station owner, what if they go to business because of this? So now the government's fucking up the economy even more.
Yep.
Because now some local guy running a gas station, he's like, business is 50% slow this month, and the bank came by and said, well, guess what? You can't pay your mortgage on the gas station.
Yeah.
We're taking it away. So the ripple effect in this is just, and I think the government's using the parks as just a small little, hey, what's going to happen if we shut down the service? Because obviously America's not going to shut down because the parks, but it is a good experiment for the government to look at and go, well, what are the ripple effects? What are people going to say? And some people are getting angry, and other people are like, hey, I'm just going to park my car and I'm going to walk into the forest. That's like in Canada, like where I live, the Alberta government shuts down the one park I go into from, I think it's about, coming up. I think it's right after Thanksgiving here in October. Right till May 5th, they close this road down because there's just too much snow.
But a lot of people can't get through, right? Is that what it is? Just too dangerous?
Yeah,
you can't get through there?
So they close it and say, look, you can't go down this road. But quite often there'll be a dozen cars. Now you have to have four-wheel drive vehicles, but you just park it on the highway, and people get out and they get their snowshoes on, and you can go cross-country skiing. So people are like, the park's closed, but it's just a gate and it's got a lock on it. So people are like, nah. If they ever had a shutdown here, same thing. You just walk around.
Now, there was a photograph that made the news this week that was big headlines all over the U.S. about this little kid standing on the gates of the zoo that was closed because of the government shutdown. He looked all sad. I want to go to the zoo. And it was all publicized everywhere. Now, Ben, I know that this is not affecting you in any way, shape, or form, but it's still an interesting story. Do you have any thoughts or comments on this?
It is interesting. I mean, I'm not entirely sure what's going on. This is a situation that doesn't actually happen under our own law here in Britain. I know we've ever had a situation like this here, certainly. But I'm quite pleased actually that the people interviewed seem to show an awful lot of awareness. It was not so much agreement or disagreement with the various issues that the politicians are currently deadlocked over. It was just an idea. I tend to get from listening to people the idea that, get over it, guys, and grow up. Come on, sort it out. Let's just get this over with. It seems to be a sort of like an anti-political view from many people, ordinary people around. I mean, I know a lady from Florida who's she booked a trip to go to Washington, D.C. and see the Smithsonian and see everything, and now she can't go because those things are all closed. Yeah. And she's annoyed by it. And it's kind of the actual issue that the Congress is actually deadlocked over seems to be rather nitpicky and trivial to most people. I mean, no doubt that a solution will be reached after an awful lot of paperwork has been generated. It'll probably involve borrowing more money from the banks and getting the state even more into debt.
Yeah.
And this is a recurring theme that's been going on for several centuries, and it won't stop now. And there's no way the U.S. government could ever pay off its national debt, and the banks don't want it to.
No,
they don't want you to pay off. They want you to pay a little bit off and then keep borrowing more, so they have a steady flow of income.
Now, something else happened along this week, which kind of piqued my interest in regard to the government shutdown, the national debt, and blah blah blah, and that is our old pal Jesse Ventura is doing the rounds. He's got a new book out on the JFK assassination that he's publicizing. But even though he's out publicizing that book, whoever interviews him usually asks him questions that relate to current affairs and what's going on in the government today. So this week he appeared on the Larry King Show on TV and to sell his book, and Larry asked him some questions about the government shutdown. And he said some very interesting things. And let's have a quick listen to this. This is kind of interesting.
What are your thoughts on what's been going on in Washington with shutdowns and debt ceilings?
I think the shutdown's pathetic, Larry. I think that here's my big question. Since the government shut down now, let's keep track of the number of days. We shouldn't have to pay taxes then, should we?
Good idea, Jesse.
If they shut the government down, then we should lose our tax obligation, because what are we paying for then?
There's something I don't understand.
Now, see, nobody's talking about that. Now, I think what he just said is very, very valid.
It is, yeah, very much indeed. I mean, he's raised an important point, which is part of our contract. In a sense, it's he's aware of the contractual relationship between ourselves and the statute law government.
But nobody's going there.
We're not their subjects.
Right? Nobody is mentioning this, right? Now, allegedly, and this is allegedly, if you were to ask people in the street, you pay taxes? Yep, I pay taxes. All right, what do you pay taxes for? What is that tax used for? well, it's used to keep the police and the ambulance and the blah, 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 and the government and this and that and the roads and whatever. It's to keep the status quo functioning, right? So if the government is essentially shut down and out of business for a week, what the fuck are we paying taxes for?
Exactly.
All right.
Our
I mean, obviously, sorry.
Go
I
ahead,
was going
Trevor.
to say, I think Jesse's pointing out our tax is voluntary.
Exactly. Well, obviously they're not.
I understand what his point of view and where he's coming from. I'm smiling, listening to him, going, I'm glad he brought that out on
it's
national television. Because to me, people start thinking, well, geez, why am I still? It's like the mafia. They're still coming to get my money, but they're not helping me out here or whatever. It's just.
Well, yeah, I mean,
our tax is voluntary.
It's not voluntary. I mean, it's mandatory. You have to pay taxes, right? Because if you don't, then you go to prison or you get fined or whatever. It's something mean and nasty will happen to you if you don't.
I'm not sure that's the case, Gareth, because I mean, it's the actual federal income tax goes back to the 1913. I think it's the Jekyll Island meeting in 1913. Where it was actually not ratified, yet they sent a statement to Congress saying that it was ratified. Now, a guy actually got taken to court over and had some fines imposed on him because he hadn't been paying his federal income tax. And the Internal Revenue Service actually took him to court. They confiscated a lot of his property. What he did was he sued them, and he used this defense. He said that, can you actually prove through a properly formatted statute I'm obliged to pay this income tax? And they couldn't. And so he sued them and he won. And after that, the IRS actually sent out some memos to its local offices talking about this and saying that all correspondence related to this case should be destroyed. In other words, it was a cover-up. They were just hoping no one else got the same idea this guy did.
No, I mean, Ben, you're absolutely correct. But in the real world where people live, you have to pay taxes. Because if you do not, you're facing major negative consequences. Now,
they will try to do you. They'll try
and
you have to resist. You can dig your heels in and resist them.
They will succeed. Most people will be like, oh, you know what? Fuck it, I'm just going to pay. I don't want to go to prison. Or some people will say, no, I'm not going to pay, and they'll end up in prison.
Mind you, if enough people refuse.
Well, of course, yeah.
They can't put everyone in jail.
Well, of course not. If everyone en masse tomorrow said, that's it, we're not paying taxes, well, then guess what? We're not paying taxes. That's the end of that.
But that's actually happened in several occasions. That's actually happened. It happened quite recently in this country over the poll tax. Do you remember the poll tax?
Yeah.
Oh, they were... the poll tax was this local government tax, which was just so unfair. It was unbelievable. It didn't take into account ability to pay or income or anything, which meant that the very rich people would be paying far less, the very poor people would be paying far more. And there was a very, very highly organised campaign against it. And this was unique amongst taxes because they were saying among the penalties for not paying would be criminal prosecutions that could result in committal to prison. They were basically threatening you with Greek buggery if you didn't pay this tax.
Yeah.
And the fact of the matter is, in the end, it was destroyed within 2 years because it was completely unworkable. Everyone stuck together and refused to pay it.
Well, that's the key is to get everyone on the same page and work together. I mean, if everyone decided, well, we're not going to do this, well, then guess what? It doesn't happen. But to get that done is an extremely difficult, if not impossible, thing to do.
Well, it's tricky for most people because most people actually, I'm sure this is the case with Trevor, it was certainly the case with me, you actually never get the choice because your tax is deducted by your employer before you even get your money. This is for self-employed people.
It's not like that over here. Over here, you do your own taxes. The government doesn't mandatorily take the taxes out of your paycheck. You got to do it.
Oh, really? Okay, yeah, because my paycheck's 100%. No, anyways, yeah, working in a hospital, it's kind of.
So I mean, you.
It's a different system, yeah.
Every year, you got to go and go with your tax accountant and sit down with them and go through how much you earned, how much you paid federal, state, and how much you have to pay the government for taxes. And you do a deal with your employer to take out X amount of money per paycheck to go to taxes, but then at the end of the year you sit down and you reconcile that and you find out whether you've paid too much or too little. If you've paid too much, then the government will pay you back what you've paid over. If you've paid too little, then you got to pay them.
Oh, right.
How about we just cut them right out so we don't even have to worry about that anymore?
Right, but it's ultimately down to you. Now, you could say when you get hired for a job, you could say, you know what, no, I'm not going to pay any of that. I'm going to take care of it myself. And then you'll sign some forms so the company's off the hook, and then it's all down to you. And then at the end of the year, you got to sit down with your tax person and figure out, well, you earned X amount of dollars this year, so out of that, you have to pay whatever percentage tax. Right?
Oh, it's a very different system.
But if you're kind of shady, or you think or you have a point to make, or you don't want to pay it, you can say, you know what, fuck that, I'm not paying them shit. Right? And that's the end of that. But if so many years go, so much water goes under the bridge, and you haven't paid for a couple of years, and you owe a significant amount of money, and the IRS gets wind of it, you're in deep shit. So they either got to sit down with you and say, look, you need to pay us back this money. We'll work it out with you. X amount of you every month. You pay us so much, so we get our money back. But if you stick your heels in and say, you know what, fuck that, I'm not paying you, well, then they'll arrest you and they'll cart you off and put you in prison.
But what kills me about a system like that is, look, if that's involuntary, everything I just don't want to. I don't believe in paying for this certain program or whatnot. But you have no choice.
Yeah, you have no choice.
I have a choice if I want to go to Walmart or another store, a little local store, and spend my money.
Right.
But I have no choice. Like what you just described is a system of extortion.
Yeah, absolutely.
Like
totally.
It's it's not a good system. So Jesse, I like that interview. How he's making people think. People are like, wow,
totally.
yeah, how come I'm still paying? Like, I don't go to Walmart this week, and Walmart doesn't knock on my door and saying, hey, you owe us $500. But I didn't go shop there.
In the United
States,
States, even though taxation is mandatory, it is compulsive, and if you don't pay it, you will get you'll have serious negative consequences. In the UK and in Canada, you don't have the option.
Well, it's different. I mean, what's different about the American system is this is what struck me amazing, because what you've described, Gareth, is totally different to what most people in my country certainly go through, because we don't. Tax is something I never had to worry about because.
Every April, April over here, dude, it is it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I had no idea. But it's really what's bad about the American situation is because you Americans actually don't benefit from the exchequer as much as we Britons do, because the government doesn't even pay for your health care.
Right.
Whereas over here, we get all our healthcare paid for.
Right.
We don't have to pay. We don't have to contribute a penny. You never have to worry about that in this country.
Well, that's the whole debate here, though, is in regard to the whole freedom, right? For because you have a socialist government, a socialist view where from your tax, healthcare is taken care of, which seems like a very civilized thing to do, right? I mean, regardless of who you are, if you get sick, you're good to go. Whereas over here, it's very much based on economy and freedoms, right?
You have insurance, don't you? You have Medicare insurance.
You have medical insurance. With your employer, when you get a job, the employer will give you some kind of medical coverage. Now, it's not going to be 100%, right? So they might say, okay, we'll cover you for 60%. So if you break your leg and you go and get your leg fixed, the company will pay for 60% of that bill, and then the rest is up to you.
That's amazing, because Britain, it doesn't matter what your ability to pay is. You could be a homeless guy living on the street.
Yeah.
You have an accident and you require reconstructive surgery that costs £280,000.
Right.
You just get it. That's it. You just get it. There's no question.
Over here,
I think they're trying to change the system. They're trying to dismantle that at the moment in this country.
Well, the mentality over here is the prevailing mentality. Not everyone thinks like this, of course, but the prevailing mentality is like, you know what? I make $200,000 a year, and I gotta pay for some fucking imbecile making $10,000 a year to get his fucking leg fixed. Fuck that shit. I'm not paying nothing for that fucking fool.
But people who talk like that, when you bring up the subject that the government has almost doubled its national debt overnight with the bank bailout, I mean, there's countless trillions of dollars were spent on that.
Of course, yeah.
Those people suddenly go, oh, well, I mean, you know, they seem to lose that righteous indignation. Isn't it strange?
Yeah, but that's...
It's like complaining about a mosquito bite on your arm while Dracula has his teeth sunk into your neck.
But that's the kind of prevailing view over here. There's a lot of people that are doing well, right? I mean, they're not wealthy or extremely rich, but they're doing okay. They're living a comfortable lifestyle, right? And because they're okay and they're doing good, they have a healthy bank account, a nice car, a nice house, whatever the case may be, they look at people who are less fortunate, like people on welfare who can't find a job or are in the poverty line. They look at them and think, you know what? Fuck you. If you're too lazy and or stupid to get your ass up and get shit done, that's up to you, pal. That's your fucking deal. I'm good. Fuck you.
It all goes
I think we had this. I think we had this healthcare debate last week.
Yeah, but no, we're not going to get
my view on healthcare. I don't know, Ben. Last week, if you'd been on the show, Alex and I come from. They call it, Canada has universal healthcare. Every province has its own little, a different package, but it's basically. Everything's paid for here, but I like to point out it's not free because somebody has to.
Somebody's got to pay for it, right?
Now I take, a very voluntarist, libertarian view on everything. I think, if government, if you want healthcare paid for, let's pay for food, let's pay for clothes, let's just have them pay for everything. I see no difference now in healthcare than it would be for like getting food and whatnot. Like, I don't think that I don't like the system of government, anyways. So
right.
I don't.
Well, let's not.
I don't like that. To me, it's a stranger.
Let's not open that can of worms and get.
I know.
He's right. I mean, it's a difficult dilemma because on the one hand, I see what you mean, Trevor. I mean, I dislike the government. I dislike the nation-state system. I feel these things do not represent our interests. In fact, they're part of the system that is bringing down this world and humanity. But at the same time, I do get kind of like, if I hurt myself, I quite like the idea that someone's going to look after me, and it's this tricky balance I've got. What I can do is I can divorce my statute law self, and then say I'm washing my hands of the state system altogether, but then I don't get any benefits from it at all. And the truth is, you get so few benefits from the state system now. It's almost a no-brainer. But in Canada, interesting enough, Trevor, that seems to be the world centre for this kind of rebellion because you have people like Guylaine Langto, from Quebec, who has resisted this and has started this Freeman on the Land thing, and that other lady whose name I can't remember from Canada. There's several famous people from Canada who are into the Freeman on the Land.
Yeah, because a guy up here, Rob in the Family Page, he just lives a couple hours next to me. Yeah, I've been in contact with him, and he's invited me up to his home, and he has an Earth ship and whatnot, and
Wait. What's an Earth ship? What is that?
Oh, well, he built his own home. It's made out of like anything he could find. He recycled tires. He dug down about 10 feet in the earth. Now, you got to remember, he's up in northern Alberta, and it's cold, and he's built himself a home that's off the grid, and he just he lives through a northern Alberta winter just comfortably, and he has been taken to court many times, and he's debated like legal fictions. They go, well, is this not you on the driver's license? He goes, that's what the government says, but this is who I am. It's a really complicated.
Yeah.
But he made a documentary called Ungrip, and like lots of people, and even in Canada, like he points out birth certificates and
sure.
Something about admiralty. It's really complicated.
But we need people like that. I know that most people will look at those guys as like mental cases, and what the fuck is wrong with you building a shack and no birth certificate? Blah, you're crazy, right? Most people are going to look at them like that. But we need those people to question these things, to say like, well, wait a second, what is a birth certificate? Why do I need one? What the fuck is up with this shit?
Yeah.
We need people to ask these questions, even though most people will be like, you're out of your mind. Get out of here. What the fuck is wrong with you?
Well, in Canada, he doesn't, he questions taxes. In Canada, even on, you turn on the radio station and they'll list the number of tax evaders. Well, 450 people just got caught for tax evasion in Canada, and they really point that out as an evil thing. And people call in and go, "Those people, they aren't paying for their fair share of health care." And
right.
I mean, Canada's a very socialist country. We don't have a military, really. They don't spend it on that, but they certainly spend it on, health care. 26 cents out of every dollar is spent on health care in Canada. Like for every tax dollar they collect, that's a big portion of money.
Yeah.
So
that's very different. It's almost the opposite in the United States, because I mean, about that much is spent on military in the USA.
Right.
The military is almost the only industry now in America.
It's huge. It's huge over here. Yeah.
Yeah, it's enormous. I mean, but it's something that was never really discussed until quite recently. But it's an important point in terms of this kind of study, because we've got several people in Britain who are really, really interesting, like Veronica Chapman and John Harris, who are saying, what is the nature of our relationship to the state in legal terms? And we have a birth certificate. The birth certificate is not a legal contract for a start, because it doesn't have our signature on it. It doesn't even have our little baby footprint. It's got nothing. It's got the signature of the registrar and your parents. That's not a legal contract. It shouldn't apply to a grown man or woman. You should have the option to ratify or choose not to ratify that when you reach the formative age, 16, 18, whatever.
But these things,
and you don't.
These things,
you don't have
though,
that option.
guys. These things, like the birth certificate, the driver's license, the taxes, all this stuff. It's so ingrained into the culture of the reality of the country and our world, that if anyone brings up any valid points against this and says, well, what is this? Why are we doing this? They're automatically, people are rolling their eyes, face palming. Oh, what is wrong with you? What the fuck is wrong with you? You're crazy. Right?
As you were saying, Trevor, you were saying that they have these TV programs. There's another one coming along tomorrow in Britain about what people on benefits. They always have these programs that pillory that people who are supposedly not paying tax or getting benefits and stuff, and making them look evil because
why don't they do TV shows
parasites.
on? Why don't they do TV shows on government officials who are getting backhanders and on the take and financing fucking 6 houses on taxpayers' money and things like that?
You have to get a license from the government to have a show to go on the airwaves. So if I have a show called Trevor Murray Volunteerist Anarchist, they're going to be like, huh?
Yeah.
You talk about the birth certificates. I got let me tell you my situation. My daughter was born on August 13th, and the nurse handed me, we're in our room, and the nurse handed us all these forms and said, you have to sign this before you're released. And I said, oh, what is it? And she goes, well, it's for the birth certificate, we have a social health care card. And I said, well, what if I don't want to sign this? And she goes, well, yeah. The nurse rolled her eyes, and she looked at me and says, well, why not? You can have all the free benefits. I said, well, I don't think that, I don't want her to sign these paperwork, because I know who my baby is, and we know who, her name. And she says, you can't. She looked at her and shook her finger at me. She says, you cannot leave here until you sign those papers. And I said, whoa. And I said, now the situation, I said, this just took a real bad turn. I said, so you're telling me you're going to keep my baby? She says, yes. If you don't sign those papers, you don't leave here. And I said, well, you better get your boss in here right now. And I'm thinking, holy shit. Now the situation went kind of jokingly, and then I kind of just joked. I said, oh, I don't think I'm going to sign these papers. And then I'll tell her that the head nurse had to come in, the manager, and she says, what's this about you not wanting to sign the papers? I said, well, hey, let's just, my wife's like, hey, can everybody just step back? And, I don't usually involve my wife in my political stuff, but I said, look, why do we have to sign these papers? And she says, well, what's your political views and stuff? And I'm like, well, I said, hey. So, let's just get, let's everything aside here. You're telling me I can't take my baby home if I don't sign the Canada birth certificate papers. She says, that's right. I said,
oh, God.
I said, so what am I, a slave? And so then I took the conversation outside into the hallway. I said, you're telling me I can't? She says, let's just get back to you. So, like, I don't know, an hour later, she came back and said, yeah, okay, you can take her, but we're going to contact CFA or Children's Family Association. And I was like, oh.
Oh, Trevor, you
actually,
you do realize that nurse and that head nurse, they thought you were a fucking maniac.
Yes. Yeah.
They thought you were out of your fucking mind.
What is this philosophy? I said, well, it's a libertarian philosophy. And I tried to describe it in a real basic way. I didn't get into real heavy. I mean, I can get into anarchist ideas, no rulers,
Right.
Rules without rulers. And I didn't want to totally scare them. But they said, yeah, you can leave here, but we're going to contact the authorities to let them know that you haven't signed your daughter's. And I was like, I said, okay. So I signed all the papers, and I was nervous signing them, but I was also pissed right off.
Right.
I said, who the fuck? I was thinking, who the fuck are you people? What am I? Cattle? I'm red.
Right.
You know what it is? Canada's a tax farm. The whole world's a bloody tax farm. But I mean, I could really go into it, and I'm thinking, I can't believe that I live in a world where I can't take my baby home because I wouldn't sign. But then they said, okay, we'll contact. Well, I'll tell you what, 2 days after we got home, there's a community nurse, kind of a kind term, I guess you can call it, community nurse. She says, well, we're going to come over to your home. I said, what? She said, well, we just want to, make sure your baby's there and whatnot. They came to my home, and there was a doctor at my door and this nurse. And before they came in, I said, before you come in here, you're gonna have to show me ID. I mean, I was being pretty rude to them. She says, she laughed. She says, oh my God, no one's ever asked us for ID. And I said, well, I don't let strangers into my home.
Right.
So I got their ID out, and I said, yep, your ID looks legitimate. They came in here and they barely even looked at her baby. They asked my wife, are you living in an abusive situation? That she looked at me and says, well, the nurse is like, are you taking time off work to take care of your baby?
What's that going to do with them?
Home. The nurse walked around. She goes, I see you have pictures of
you know what you should do? You should say, well, what's your address? I'm going to pay you a fucking visit next week and look through your goddamn house. How'd you like that?
That's how it is here. And I believe that because I questioned the papers, that this is why they did it. If you don't have these people come into your house, then that nurse and doctor will come back with, a couple guys in black pajamas with shiny tin badges and guns. And they'll say, you're going to let these people in the house.
Let me ask you a question, Trevor.
It escalates. And this is where the government, this is what scares me. Okay, I want to live in a society where, hey, you just had a baby? Great. You can take her home. I'm not going to have you sign paperwork.
Well, so it's your kids. It's got nothing to do with him.
Pardon?
It's your kid. There's nothing to do with them. Let me ask you a question, though, Trevor, because something happened with my daughter when she was born, and I want to see if this kind of thing happens in Canada also. Now, I think I've told this story before on Mindset, but I'll tell it again real briefly. Sure. So my daughter was born in 2002, and my first child. And, we're all at the hospital. Everyone's happy, the bundle of joy and blah, 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 whatever. And they bring her in, and she's lying there in the little crib they got. And I'm looking at her, and I'm looking at her toes and her feet. And I look at her foot, and I notice there's like a cut in the heel of her foot, like a slice.
Say the heel.
Like a slice in her foot. I'm like, what the fuck is this? So when the nurse comes by, I'm like, what's up with her foot? It looks like it's been cut. Did something happen? Did something fall on her? Or what the fuck's going on? And she's like, oh, no. That's we took some blood from her because we want to check her against fatal diseases or anything like that. And I'm like, well, no one mentioned that to me. No one said, excuse me, Mr. Davis, is it okay if we do this? So you just fucking just did it on a whim? No. I said, oh yeah, that's the state law. We have to do that. But they let you. If I hadn't have seen it, I would have been none the wiser. Nobody told me. Nobody would have told me. If I hadn't have brought it up, I wouldn't have known nothing.
It's really sinister, actually. What you
I had to.
Did that happen to you?
My baby. Well, they did it. Again, I had no choice. They're like, we're taking this blood work because they want to know, well, if she has this kind of disease, then we don't want her leaving the hospital.
Well, see, I think that's fucking horseshit. I think it's got nothing to do with the blood work and diseases and all that shit. I think it's a DNA fucking swab, so they can have the DNA on record.
Yeah,
it could well be. I mean, we were talking in the previous program about how they take fingerprints illegally from people unlawfully, and they store them. But what you described, Trevor, I mean, hopefully you've given some people some food for thought, because probably a lot of people just go along with it without questioning, and that is that it's essential licensed reproduction. You have a baby with permission from the state. And this is what the eugenicists have been after for a very long time, where reproduction becomes it's no longer a natural thing. It's something that is regulated by the state.
They allow you to have a child.
Yeah, they allow you to have a baby, and then once you've had that baby, they have to license your basically your fatherhood and or motherhood. And This is hopefully you've given them something to think about, though, mate. Because I mean, you're well done for making a stand on that. It doesn't matter if you it doesn't matter if you eventually sign the paperwork, because at least you made your point. You know what I mean? There's no valor in being a false martyr. You've done a good thing there.
Well,
you signed the
I
paperwork
did,
under
and
duress.
I had good conversation with both the nurses afterwards. She says, "Well, what are you?" Like I said, look, I'm a student and teacher of philosophy of libertarian. They said, "Well, what university do you teach at?" I said, "No." I said, I'm on the internet. I said, I teach this, and I'm still learning."
The minute you said you're on the internet, they thought, dude, they were 3 seconds away from putting a fucking straitjacket on you and carting you away.
Yeah,
they thought you were a fucking mental case.
I mean, I really reeled back. I mean, I didn't tell them as much as I would like to, but I tried to get them thinking. And the nurse says, she's like, I don't understand. She's still, the one nurse was like, I don't understand why you wouldn't want to sign these. I said, look, I just want to question everything. And I didn't talk too much philosophy or politics, but I said, look, I'm the kind of guy who does question everything, and I just want to know why I have to sign this. And they came out with the standard bullshit of, but now you're entitled to Social Security and the paperwork we had to sign. And I said, I just simply was shocked when you said I couldn't take my baby home. That's when the head nurse was like, "Oh, no, she was mistaken. You can take her, but we are going to contact." They call them CFA out here, so like a child welfare.
No, but even the wording. Oh yeah, no, we're mistaken. You can take her. What the fuck has it got to do with you? Whether I can or cannot take her?
Yeah,
nothing to do with you. Get out of here.
And it's a secure ward. The delivery room in Canada, they're all locked doors. Like you can't get in and out unless you have to wave to the camera. And then
true.
the nurse,
it's the same, yeah. And that's exactly the same in Oxford. I mean, I'm sure you can share. When I was portering at the John Radcliffe, it's a major maternity unit at the John Radcliffe. you need a swipe card to get in and out of the various places.
Oh yeah.
And this is supposedly for security to prevent baby snatching, because there's been some baby snatching cases in Britain.
Babies.
But it works the same way the other way around. I mean, it's a fortress wall to keep people in as well as to stop them getting out. And it works both ways.
We had to tell the nurse. There's like, well, we're going out for just our wife and I said we're going to leave the baby in the ward, and we just went out for lunch. It's like, yeah, you just let your nurse know, and I'm like, why? Like, what am I, 5? I want to go out for lunch.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so that's a very scary thing that I think about. And anyways, we had the community nurse. She phoned my wife last week. Because guess who called? Holly called, and she's wanting to know if she's being beaten, and does she have postpartum depression?
Dude, you should say, Holly, what's your number? Yeah, I'm going to give you a call randomly every couple of weeks, see if everything's okay with your home life. I want to see if your husband is beating the shit out of you. Because if he isn't, maybe he fucking should.
Oh my God! And the day they were here, the health nurse and doctor. Just a little side note: I had gotten a speeding ticket 2 days before in a child play zone, and of course, the doctor turned the ticket so he could read it. And I thought, "Fuck! I left it out on the counter." They came in. I thought, "Oh,
wait! Hang on a second here. Let's just. I want to get this straight in my fucking head here. So you get a ticket, speeding ticket, right?
Yeah.
You put the speeding ticket down on the table in your house.
Yeah, I forgot.
This fuck comes into your house, is snooping around, looking at your documents on what?
Yeah,
dude, I would have thrown. I would. You know what, dude? Get the fuck out of my house.
Like the nurse, it was really scary. And then she walked into our living room. She goes, "Oh, I see you're Scottish." I said, yeah, because we have a lot of I got a 6 foot long sword in the front room too. It's just for display, but we have a lot. I have pictures of myself in my kilt and whatnot. So she's going on our fireplace, looking at our family, and as she's doing that, the doctor's confronting me, going, "What kind of vitamin D drops are you giving the baby?" I said, here. And then they're looking on my fridge, and of course on my fridge I got this.
Wait. They open your fridge?
No, they were looking on my fridge door because we had pictures on there.
Dude, you should have said to me, could you empty out your pockets, please?
Well,
I just want to check through your shit.
They asked us, do you have any guns, knives, or any weapons in your home? And my wife was like, we have kitchen knives. And then she said, my wife, she goes, I'm not. She was going to say, it's none of your business.
Of course, it's nothing to do with him.
Like, I was actually going to ask them at the door, going, well, before you come in here, let me see your ID. And then I was going to say, do you have any guns or knives or weapons? I think they found out. They know my business. I sell survival gear, so I don't. I think they and they came on. It was an intrusion of privacy, and I really feel in 1984.
Of course.
Oh, it is.
Yeah.
Well, this is something I could really relate to because I've told this story on the program before, but I don't know if I've told it to you, Murray. Sorry, to Trevor Murray. Trevor, when my daughter was 10 years old, school tried to take her fingerprints, and they didn't even tell me until I found out they were going to do it. They had a little announcement in the school newsletter, which, to my discredit, I didn't read very carefully until Louisa pointed it out to me. And I was absolutely furious. And I tried to get some information from the school about what the hell was going on, and they wouldn't answer me. They wouldn't even tell me. In the end, I managed to get, the headmistress wouldn't speak to me, so I got fobbed off on the librarian, who just sort of said, "Oh, don't worry, Mr. Emlyn-Jones, it's nothing." I said, "It's not nothing. You're going to take my kids' fingerprints without telling me. You're going to put them on a database which you can use for God knows what, and you're psychologically conditioning the youngest members of our society to accept this sort of thing as normal." Right. And I was absolutely furious. In the end, I just wrote to the school and said, "You're not to take any biometric data from my daughter. I've instructed her to refuse if any staff member tries." And it's
total 1984.
It's crazy.
Yeah, because what's going to happen is, if you remember in the book 1984, Winston, the main character, he says the people he's most scared of is the children.
Yeah,
because they've grown up in the big. They don't know anything better because they've grown up in it. They think that's the only world possible.
Exactly, and that's what this is doing. It's reinforcing a worldview. It's like the reason that nurse rolled her eyes at Trevor and thought he was nuts is not because he was wrong, because Trevor was not wrong.
Yeah.
She rolled her eyes because society and culture in general has reinforced the conditioning that you have to sign these papers.
Yeah, she probably got very disturbed because in her subconscious she probably may have understood that you were making a very, very valid point, which she doesn't want to think about.
Exactly.
And you were forcing her to think about it, and she's conditioned like we all are.
Now, guys,
and what's the next step? They come over to my house. Now, again, the nurse showed up here. She goes, "You're the very first person who's ever asked me for ID." And I said, well, I don't let strangers in my home. She goes, well, that's a good thing. And I'm thinking, well, do I? If that's, I almost, and I was going to say at the door, is this a voluntary or involuntary visit?
Yeah.
And if she had said voluntary, I would have said, okay,
bye.
I would have shut the door.
Yeah, absolutely.
But I was afraid that they're going to take my baby. And I'll tell you right now, when I talked to my wife about this stuff, when I first met her, she was probably thinking, this guy's a nut. But no, we hit it off. We've been together for 3 years now, I guess. I'm trying to remember. But I'm afraid if they take my baby. Now my wife's like, if anyone ever tries to take her baby, I dread the day anyone tries to pull the baby out of her arms. Taking a baby from any female,
absolutely,
doesn't matter what species, bear, wolf, human.
Oh yeah,
but I said I will defend my baby. If anyone came here and says we're taking your baby, I will defend with my life.
Sure.
And my wife, I said I don't want you to have to see that, but
she says,
well,
be a bloodbath.
Well, she goes, I'll be the next one down on the floor. She's already said it.
Yeah.
And I said I will defend my baby. I want her to live in a free world. I want her to grow up with peace and love. But when I start talking about defending my home, then you're right, Gareth. People go, well, he's a nut.
Absolutely,
he's a nut.
Of course.
But then I go, why am I a nut? Because I'm the one who doesn't want to question people, or question people in the sense of, well, I don't know, not question. I don't want people to sign paperwork. I don't think it's any of my right. It's you just had a baby and.
I have another story here that we're going to get into, which ties into the whole state and medical deal. But I want to just bring up something that happened to me yesterday very quickly. Yesterday, we were, as I said, my wife and I were out shopping, and we're at the cash register and we were paying, and it was taking a while, and it's because the girl was doing the register or whatever. And for whatever, talking to the blah, 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 talking about whatever, and it came up that I wasn't a citizen, because I'm not a citizen. I live here illegally. I own a green card and all that stuff, but I'm still a British citizen living in the U.S. And she said, so what does that mean? What's the difference? And I said, well, there's no, I still pay tax and all the same shit you do. It's just I can't vote and I can't do jury service. And I said, and I don't want to do those two things anyway, so I'm good. And she was like, oh, you don't want to vote? She's like, oh, I love to vote. I love taking part in this country's future. And my wife gave me a look like, shut the fuck up. do not say a fucking word. Because
someone once told me, right, that because I told them that I don't vote, and they said, well, if you don't vote, it means you don't have a right to complain or make any statement at all about any political situation, because you don't do anything you don't take part in it, so you've got no right to talk about it. And I thought, you fool.
Yeah.
This is, you're saying essentially that if you don't take part, like I say, in this fraud of democracy, it's so ingrained, it's such a big lie. The people are actually saying this. You don't take part in this fraud of democracy, therefore you can't make any statement about any political issue. How ludicrous!
Well, there's two.
That's another ludicrous thing. Like, I tell people I don't vote, and they go, "What are you, an idiot?"
Crazy. Well, there's two things you can say when somebody says that to you, because that's a very common comeback, and the two things you can say are kind of humorous, so it's not going to be too mean and nasty to kind of get people's blood boiling. But you could say, like, well, it doesn't really matter, because no matter who you vote for, the government always gets in.
Yeah.
That's one you could do. And I say, oh, no, I never vote. It only encourages them.
Yeah, that's good. And you know what? There's very often you'll get a reply when you say you don't vote. People will often say to you, people have died to give you the right to vote. And they'll talk about the Chartists, they'll talk about the suffragettes, they'll talk about, South Africa and the ANC, and they'll talk about the wars we fought for democracy, lighter in the air, waving your lighter in the air, everybody. And my reply to that is, well, does a piece of hooky goods become genuine when you pay a higher price for it?
Yeah. Yeah, totally.
You get you get a fake painting from some art gallery for £1 million or something like that, and they say, well, this is a fake. You can't buy that for £1 million. I say, well, okay, shall I pay £100 million for it? Then will it become genuine?
Right.
Will it become a real Da Vinci or a real Van Gogh?
Depending on what you pay for it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I think it makes it all the more sick. It makes it all the more sick and the more despicable that the fact that people have died for this right to put a cross on a piece of paper every 4 years and choose your government's public relations officer. I think it makes it more of a tragedy. It makes it more nasty, not less.
You could do that. If they say that, say, well, people have died. I say, I know, it's disgraceful, isn't it? It's terrible.
Yeah.
All those people have given their lives to support these thieving fucking con men pieces of shit. Oh, it's terrible, exactly. I know. And they'll be like, what?
But we have to bring these ideas forward, and that's why I brought it forward at the hospital, and then I backed away big time. But I got the idea implanted into
you planted a seed,
head.
Trevor. You planted a seed.
But the thing is, what scares me now is I have a baby. And before, I'm like, okay, you can come and you can throw me on the ground, break my kneecaps. That's fine. Throw me in jail forever. But now that I have a baby, I do think I try to be more subtle. And I try to, like you say, Gareth, give some funny ways of saying, if someone says, you don't vote, and they give you that weird look. So try to come up with a bit more.
Absolutely.
Plant an idea in their head. Like, you don't want to you can't look. Maybe they'll go home 3 days later and go, "Wow, that guy said something profound."
Yeah. So it doesn't matter who you vote for. The government always gets in.
Yeah, that's a good one. But then it is a good one. Again, some people might go, "You don't like government, nut job." It's a very hard thing to do. It's and again, now that I have a baby, it's.
Right.
I'm scared to death.
All right. Well, speaking of babies and the state
It just changed everything.
And
Trevor's right, it
governments.
changes everything when you have a kid.
Let's have a listen to this
Oh, yeah.
clip. This is something that's rapidly going on in the UK. The one I found out about this, my blood started to boil, and I'm sure your blood will boil also if you're unaware of this. Ben, you might be aware of this, but let's have a listen to this clip. It's very, very, very disturbing.
Can a 15-year-old be forced to have a vaccination against their express wishes if one of their parents insists? Last month, the High Court judge ordered that a 15-year-old girl and her 11-year-old sister had to have the MMR jab by the end of today, even though they said they didn't want it. The elder had said, "I'd be so upset if that was in my body." The mother didn't want them vaccinated either, but the parents are divorced and the father brought the case. It was Andrew Wakefield's research, published in 1998, that triggered a national panic about MMR and a possible link with autism. The mother didn't want the girls vaccinated. The father agreed. Wakefield's work, now discredited, had a significant national impact. As the yellow bars show, vaccination rates dropped. They're now rising, but many older children are vulnerable. Cases of measles, mumps, rubella have been growing. In Wales, people have been queuing outside clinics, desperate to get their children vaccinated after measles broke out there. This prompted the girl's father to change his mind. He was worried there could be serious consequences of these illnesses. He wanted the children vaccinated.
Here we go. Okay.
The judge had to consider the children's concerns and their understanding of the issues. They were worried about the ingredients in the vaccine, but they were less worried about the ingredients in any medicine they might have to take if they contracted any of these diseases. One said, "With measles, you only get a rash." The court-appointed guardian was worried they'd been strongly influenced by their mother. In turn, the mother gave evidence she was worried about the psychological impact on the children, particularly the elder one, who'd been counselled for anxiety.
Parents have a choice to do what they feel in their hearts they really believe. I feel both children have grown up in a frame of mind which they were settled in and supported in the same outlook, and are now forced to take a different view without more positive reassurance. And the recording of ingredients of the vaccine is unsatisfactory. They have a right to be informed.
Plainly, the older a child is, the more seriously her views are taken, the more carefully she's listened to by the court. In this case, the judge decided that the views expressed by this 15-year-old weren't sufficiently balanced, weren't sufficiently sensible, and didn't give sufficient weight to the positive side of the immunisation.
I'm aware that this is against the girls' wishes, but that is not the only factor. The court also has to consider their level of understanding of the issues involved and what factors have influenced their views. In this case, I do not consider there is a balanced level of understanding by them of the issues involved.
No parent wants to expose their child to unnecessary danger.
The medical debate is settled, lawyers say. This is the third time the High Court has ruled a child should have the MMR vaccine against parents' wishes. It's unusual for children to have such strong objections too. The judge acknowledged it will have an impact on the family.
This is, I don't even know where to begin with this. This is mind-blowing to me. Now, I immediately want to go to Ben because Ben is in the UK where this took place, and get your view on this, Ben. But I am fucking my jaw is on the fucking ground.
Yeah, I mean this is very, very sinister, extremely disturbing and worrying, and the implications of this court case are quite far-reaching. Because I know in the States it's different because in I think most regions of the United States, it is actually the law that you have to have your children vaccinated, and it's quite difficult to wriggle out of it. Right. I know people who do, but it's not easy. In Britain, we still have that freedom of choice. We can still have that choice. Now, there's a lot of pressure being placed from people in the medical profession, from the skeptics, from the people like that the law should be changed to force people in Britain to be vaccinated, that we go along with the majority of the American situation where children have to be vaccinated. You have your full protocol of vaccines, you have to have them. Now, what we have a situation here is when the parents are in conflict over what happens, and the child is it's not a little baby. This is a 15-year-old. It's a 15-year-old and 11-year-old girl.
Exactly.
They want to go along with the mother, and their views haven't. It sounds to me like the views of the children who are not babies. They are virtually almost. One of them is almost an adult. The other one's getting very close. Has not even been taken into account. And, I've spoken before about my own views, about my own worries about vaccines, about the link between vaccination and biological warfare and things like that. I mean, that's a big subject to go into, which probably would take a long time. But basically, my own view is that I do not feel safe being vaccinated. I do not trust vaccination. I would not have my child vaccinated if I know now. If I knew then what I know now, I would not have had my child vaccinated. And the state is once again intervening. It's like we're talking about what Trevor went through. And Trevor, you probably will have to face this at some point, mate, because, I mean, unfortunately, they are going to come. They do come for people like you. Yeah. They're trying to change the law now. So they're trying to, little by little, they're nudging the law into a situation where the state is intervening more and more in situations like this. Overruling parenthood, things like that. And
it comes down to freedom to choose, freedom of choice, and it pisses me off that someone says you have to get vaccinated. Hey, and then I hear, well, my kid's not safe now. I'm like, well, so what? Your kid should be safe. He's vaccinated.
That's my argument. Exactly, Trevor. Exactly.
Yeah,
that's the way I think of it.
If your kid's vaccinated, what are you worried about my kid if he drops dead?
Right,
but he won't because I believe in the immune system of a human body. Let it work itself out. There's a lot of issues there, but basically I take all the issues away and go, it's control. It comes down to control.
That's exactly it.
It's I don't. Some people are like, well, yeah, the ingredients here's good or bad, or I don't look at it from that standpoint. I look at it from as soon as you say I have to do something, fuck you.
No, I agree
I'm an
completely.
anti-authoritarian, and I just believe that you should have the freedom to choose what you want to do with your own body, as long as you aren't aggressing on my property, which is my body and anything I guess I own. So I'm cool with it, but.
No, I agree with you completely.
Now, my wife, she's been going to the doctors, and I said, have they been pushing for these needles? She said, yeah, she hasn't gotten. I said, oh, you haven't gotten any. She goes, oh, God, she wouldn't get anything without, talking to me first. And, well, she already knows I said I'm against it. She would like to do something about the measles or something, but but they aren't forcing it on her. Every time she goes, I guess they're like, here's a list of needles your kid needs.
Here's the deal. It doesn't matter. I mean, even if these vaccinations are beneficial and good and keep people healthy, even if all that is true, as soon as they mention mandatory or compulsory, I firmly agree with Trevor. It's like, fuck you. Whenever somebody says, "Oh no, you have to do this," no,
exactly. One thing they're pushing in Canada. My wife said something about polio or something vaccines again. I'm like, what? That's a big thing in the news lately. The news, I've heard it, but also my wife coming back from the doctor saying something about polio vaccinations. Like, what?
Well, it's something else. They say, well, if your kid isn't vaccinated, and this is to echo what you said, Trevor, if your kid's not vaccinated, well, they're going to get disease and they're going to spread disease. And I was like, but didn't you get your kid vaccinated? Well, yes. Well, then what the fuck do you care? You're fine, right?
Then they get mad at you. Whoa.
But you know what I mean? That's the kind of illogical, irrational thinking. If you're all for this and you think, oh, yes, it's fucking great, vaccination, blah, 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 and I get vaccinated, my kid gets it, we're all good, then what the fuck do you care if Joe Blow across the street doesn't get vaccinated? What do you care? You're vaccinated. You don't give a fuck. Why are you involved in this?
But those people are so militant that they protest to the government. Oh, everyone needs to be vaccinated. But then again, it just comes back to control. It could be the best thing in the world, but let me decide.
Exactly. Exactly.
There's things with my daughter that I just look at her and I go, let her choose when she's old enough.
Right.
If she's old enough, says, Dad, I'd like to get these 15 needles. Okay, sure. I'll be the first one to take her there.
Right.
I'll say, okay, I've given you the information. I've exposed you to everything I possibly can find. And I'm not like, if I'm against something, I'll find the stuff as she says, I think I want. Okay, I'll help you. I'll direct her into the the searches to find the information. But I'll be the first one to take her. If she says consciously to me, I'd like to get this done, I've researched it, and I'm like, okay, I just because I'm opposed to something doesn't mean that she has to be. Or
Now this case in the UK, right? These kids are like 11 and 15, right? So they're still under the protection of their parents. Now, at this point, the girl's opinion on this, even though legally they should not have an opinion on this. It's the opinion of the parents. The parents should say whether or not they should get the vaccination. Now, the minute these kids become legally adults, then it's got nothing to do with the parents. They can do whatever the fuck they want. If they want to get shots every 3 seconds, go for it. But until then, it's up to the parents. I tell you who it's absolutely not up to, and that's the fucking government. Yeah. The government should not be in this loop at all. Now, if the government is saying, look, we're offering these vaccinations, it's been shown to prevent X, Y, and Z disease, blah, 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 and the parents are like, oh, you know what, that makes sense to me, maybe we should get the kids vaccinated, I have no issue with that. That's fine. But if the parents say, no, you know what, I'm going to pass on this one, I have no issue with that. But when the government says you have to do this, I got a big fucking issue with it.
Yeah, but this is the government down the line. I mean, there was something brilliant posted on Facebook I actually posted it on my wall. But it's a brilliant little picture. It was that the government is like this, right? They break your legs, then they sell you a wheelchair. Then they tax the wheelchair, they regulate use of the wheelchair, and then they tell you, look, if it wasn't for us, you wouldn't be able to get around half as well. Exactly. And that's just, it's so true, isn't it?
That's totally true. That's a great one, Ben. I like that.
They also say things like, when it comes to anarchism and things like that, they say, well, if we had anarchism, society would implode and self-destruct because humans would become like monsters and go around just beating each other up and robbing each other and raping each other and killing each other because there'd be nothing to stop them. Again, this is their theory, and who is it who promotes that idea? The government,
right?
The people who have a vested interest in believing that. They say, look, you need us. Look what happened to you if we weren't there.
That's the same argument that religious people have. Well, religion gives us morals and ethics, and what a bunch of fucking horse shit.
Yeah,
nonsense.
They say that because they have a vested interest in us believing it.
So it's like, oh, well, if you weren't religious, then you'd be out, fucking drug dealing and shooting people and having sex every 3 seconds.
Exactly. No, that's right. This is why you need us. This is why you have to give us your money and you have to let us control your lives. Because if you didn't, look what state you'd be in. But it's a load of crap.
Of course, it's lunacy.
Like as what's it Neo said in The Matrix. I'm going to show these people what you don't want them to see. I'm going to show them a world without you.
Right.
Yeah. And that's what they don't want us to see.
You know what I'm going to show you right now is a break. We've been yapping for a little while, so let's.
I need a cup of tea.
Let's take a little break, then we'll come back with some more topics.
It's the British in me. It's the British in me.
Need some tea and toast. Yes, old boy. Get some tea. Get some tea down your throat. All right, folks. We'll be back in just a moment. Smoke them if you got them.
Paratalk, an intimate discussion on all things strange. This is a show where more questions are raised than answers are given, and things sometimes really do go bump in the night. Hosted by Reeves Cook and Garrett Davis. You can listen to Paratalk at MindsetCentral.com.
You're listening to the Mindset Network.
You can now hear all of the Mindset Central podcast while on the go with the Stitcher Smart Radio app. On-demand news, talk, and more on your mobile phone. The latest episodes at Mindset Central are always available for you. No syncing needed and no memory or storage wasted. Available on your iPhone, iPad, Android phones, and beyond. Downloading is easy. Go to Stitcher.com or check out your app store. Stitcher Smart Radio, the smarter way to listen to MindsetCentral.com.
That was Future Wife right there with I'm Gonna Die, which is a standout track on the latest episode of Mindset Radio Hour, hosted by none other than Joe Dunn. That was from episode 43 of the Mindset Radio Hour. So if you guys want to get into some new, up-and-coming and alternative sounds, check out the Mindset Radio Hour on MindsetCentral.com. I believe that we're going to have a brand new episode coming out this week, probably Thursday or Friday, so stay tuned for that. Great tune, don't you think, guys?
That was nice. I really liked it.
Wasn't it cool?
Great song.
I'm going to die. I'm going to die someday.
It's kind of like a bittersweet kind of slightly humorous thing, I thought.
Yeah, very nice.
Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't get to hear the music. I just sat down. I had to make my cup of tea.
Grab your tea and ran as fast as you could back to the microphone.
I did. I was, did what I had to do, and the first thing I had to get was a cup of tea.
Very good, very good. All right, let's see what enough we got going on here today. Now, we have a clip here that Ben was good enough to furnish us with in regard to, this is kind of a British-centric clip, but also it has components which could be used from regardless of which country you're from. There's an extremely right-wing organization in the UK called the EDL, which I was completely unaware of until a few episodes ago on the Mindset Podcast when it was brought up. And apparently these are fairly despicable people that most people in the UK are looked down upon or are against. Am I way off here, Ben?
Yeah, I mean, it's some people, unfortunately, they have got a lot of grassroots support because they're a strange organisation because they claim not to be racist, and they actually do welcome non-white members and things like that. Their main focus is against radical Islam. That's their main focus. And this ties in very much to what we were talking about at the beginning of the program because, what's happened is, I mean, it'll be explained in the clip that the leader has quit. He's quit and he's joined another organisation.
No, the organization that he's joined, is it a competing organization or something radically different?
It's called the Quilliam Foundation, and it's a think tank made up mostly of ex-radical Muslims who are trying to promote, they say, tolerance, and they're trying to promote the idea that Islam is not a religion of war and suffering and anger and oppression, which is true actually in many cases. The problem I have, which I'll explain, is that the Quilliam Foundation is trying to it seems to be very, very oblivious to the various wars going on, which are being waged by Israel and by Western countries as well in the Middle East. It seems to be. It doesn't talk about that, and it doesn't bring that into the subject, which I think it should do.
All right, let's play a little bit of the clip. It's a fairly long clip, so I doubt we'll sit through the whole thing, but we'll play a couple of minutes here to get a good feel of what this guy is talking about as far as leaving the organization and what the organization is about. This is from was it the BBC show Newsnight, right, Ben?
Yes, it is. Yeah, Newsnight with Jeremy Paxman.
Okay, here we go.
Two of the founders of one of Britain's most visible right-wing organisations, the English Defence League, are leaving. Without a trace of irony, one of them, Tommy Robinson, says that some of the members of an organisation accused of stoking up racial tensions are far-right extremists. Well, I'm going to ask him about it shortly. First, though, let's see Jim Reed's report on the EDL.
I don't care whether you sound racist. I don't care what you say to me. I don't care if you want to kill me. We don't care whatever you say. We're going to continue to fight it no matter what.
He might have a reputation for noise and bluster, but this news was kept very quiet indeed. After 4 years trying to run the English Defence League, the man who calls himself Tommy Robinson is now suddenly walking away. He sat between two former Muslim jihadists to make his point that the EDL is becoming too extreme and loud, sometimes violent demonstrations are just not working.
I'm asking all my supporters who have followed me to put faith in the decision we're making and follow in. I don't believe street protests and the way it's going is the way forward. I believe an opportunity has to be given to see if this can progress. And it can progress to be the debate, instead of being had out on the street, can be had in an arena that it is supposed to be had.
It was this demonstration in 2009 that changed everything for Tommy Robinson. Muslim protesters shouted insults as the Royal Anglian Regiment marched through Luton town centre. Robinson led a counter-demonstration that eventually turned into the EDL. The group has no normal joining procedures and no membership list. Its street protests often descend into violence and arrests. But people who watch the EDL say Robinson is in fact one of its less extreme members. For the last 9 months, he's been followed by a camera crew as he was brought together with moderate Muslims.
I think the vast majority of the people in this country would want the burqa banned. Is there a religious need to wear a burqa?
And there's an emphasis on modesty, but people interpret that in many different ways, and you can see for yourself.
In the process of making the film, to be broadcast on the BBC this autumn, he was introduced to the anti-extremist group, the Quilliam Foundation. It's helped trigger his departure, along with another senior member of the EDL.
They've demonstrated a level of courage because, of course, let's not forget there are elements within the EDL that will be furious right now, and they will consider them both traitors. I know that because there were elements within the Islamist movements that considered me a traitor when I left Hizb ut-Tahrir. There are also elements within Islamist extremist organisations who will be very angry and suspicious of this because we've just removed their justification for existing.
The reaction from EDL supporters is hard to measure at this stage. On internet forums, there are plenty of comments of support for Robinson, many, though, of disbelief. I thought Tommy would rather die on his knees than surrender. What is he thinking of, says one Facebook post. Another reads, he's a failure, so Islam has won. We the British have to do what we must. Find a new, true leader.
In some ways, Tommy Robinson is really just a spokesperson for a number of regional English defence leagues. That, however, is a problem. It's far easier for the police to contain and to control demonstrations that the English Defence League has when there's one leader and one group. And actually, if the group fragments and actually turns into a large number of smaller, sometimes quite nasty groups, it's going to be far harder to police.
As for Tommy Robinson, there is now talk of leading a new political group. The question for many is whether that will just be a watered-down version of the English Defence League, or it can really be something different, genuinely non-violent and genuinely non-racist.
Well, Tommy Robinson is here.
Well, let's not listen to Tommy Robinson blab his bullshit. But firstly, Tommy Robinson's not even his real name, right, Ben?
No, he's called Stephen Lennon, is his real name.
What's up with that? What's this Tommy Robinson fucking nonsense?
Well, he says he did that to protect himself because he was worried about reprisal, so he changed his name and things like that. And he's a family man. He's got a wife and kids. What interested me there was that this whole thing comes back to this whole idea about how Islam is being used as bait in the trap. Now, Islam, what we think, this image we have of Islam, which is burqas, bombings, beheadings, flogging, things like that,
Right.
It's not universal within the Muslim world. It relates to a single type, a certain type of Muslim Islam called Wahhabism and things like that, and various other extremist sects. Now, that's an interpretation that dates back just 200 years. Islam dates back over almost 1,500 years. And there's a misconception that all of Islam is like Wahhabism, and the reason radical Islam exists in the UK is because it's overflowing. It's a kind of overspill from the homelands of Islam via immigration. But this is actually not true. What's happened, and this goes back to the formation of the English Defence League in Luton in 2009, because what you saw there, you saw a group of Muslims who looked like villains from a Tom Clancy novel, basically. Beards, shirt tails, little pillbox hats.
Yeah.
Hurling abuse at a parade of soldiers. Now, what's interesting about that is, apart from the almost cliche appearance of them, is the leader is a guy called Anjem Chowdhury, who has links to British intelligence. And this is a feature that comes back again and again and again. Why are these radical Islamic clerics in British mosques, not from the Middle East, they're in British mosques, why do they have links to intelligence agencies of our government? And secondly, the English Defence League itself is it's basically a group of people who really rather like football hooligans. They just don't have a team to support, I think. And they're very well known for their very loud, very noisy, disruptive street protests. And they usually a counter demonstration comes along and it descends into a riot. And usually they're street brawling and things like that.
So, Ben, do you think, I mean, it sounds like from what you're saying so far, but I don't want to put words in your mouth, but do you think that this whole radicalization is an intelligence operation.
Yes, it is. I think it is. I think there's overwhelming evidence that is the case. We see people are coming in from the Middle East. They're moderate Muslims. They get radicalized in British mosques when they've arrived. Even Nick Griffin of the British National Party has admitted this. And he's not my favourite person in the world. I think he's a buffoon, but he seems to occasionally stumble on these interesting bits of information without understanding how significant they are.
Right.
Now, the English Defence League itself has links to people like Alan Lake, who has links to Mossad, and it seems quite like that Mossad are running the EDL.
But to what end though? What's your speculation as to why they're doing all this stuff? Why do they need radicalized Muslims in the UK? And if they don't exist, why are they having people pretend to be them?
Because it's rather like Brian Gerrish, a British researcher, says. He says that Muslims are the new Jews. Now, what happened was Adolf Hitler justified his regime by basically giving people some bad guys to point fingers at. And he said a lot of Hitler's regime in the 1930s in Germany was actually brought in through policy to control the Jews. And a lot of the German people were united behind these policies, which they otherwise would not have supported because they were very oppressive policies. But they say, look, you agree to this, we'll sort the Jews out. And we're getting this now. You say, you agree to this, we'll sort out the Muslims, we'll sort out immigration for you. Right. If you agree to these policies, this includes a database state. It includes entitlement cards for the NHS. It includes more of the big brother stuff that Trevor and you and I have been talking about throughout this program.
Yeah.
And what's more, what Tommy Robinson has done now, I think Tommy Robinson is actually, I don't think he's a bad guy as such. I think he's well-meaning, but he's very, very naive. And I think he's obviously not I don't want to sound demeaning, but he's obviously not a very intelligent guy. He's not very bright. He's joined this thing called the Quilliam Foundation, which again it looks to me like it's a think tank. Well, now you've got to watch out whenever you hear the term think tank.
Yeah. Now I've seen Tommy Robinson interviewed on YouTube and stuff, right, where he's on these shows and they're asking him questions, and you're right. He comes off like as a little kid, like he doesn't know what the fuck is going on. He stumbles over his words. He sounds like a fucking retard, but. Is that because he's a dope or because he doesn't have the kind of television personality charisma to come off like, you know what I mean? Like you can put smart and intelligent people on TV and they come off as retards because they don't have the gift of the gab and they don't have the smarmy kind of dopey grin on their face where they're comfortable with a camera on them.
Well, he said before 2009 he was completely apathetic in terms of his politics. He was a member of the British National Party, but he didn't consider himself sort of like very active. He didn't consider himself particularly devout in any way. He said he never even switched on a computer, let alone looked at anything that was on the internet.
Okay.
Then you were faced with this spectacle in Luton in 2009, which was seen as the leader has links to British intelligence. It sounds to me like an intelligence psychological operation.
Right.
This demonstration, this attack on the parading soldiers in Luton. It was designed to horrify, to shock, to inflame, to enrage. That's what it was intended to do.
We see that. I mean, we see that constantly with the agent provocateur, right?
That's what it was.
Every major demonstration, if it's a big demonstration, the police or the government or whomever will send operatives into the crowd to start shit. To start problems, right?
What's really interesting about this organisation, it's known as Al-Muhajirun. It has several other names. It doesn't actually do anything except turn up at various events whenever a TV camera happens to be there and do something that's really inflammatory and distasteful. I mean, they'll even turn up at a soldier's funeral and hurl abuse and things like that. Or they'll burn remembrance poppies and things like that, which I don't consider that to be a crime as such. But I mean, the hurling abuse at a funeral is completely out of order.
Right.
But they'll do it deliberately. And just when the newsmen happen to be there.
Yeah, just to get that emotional response.
Just to get those pictures,
get it on TV.
Filmed.
Yeah, it's very suspect. It really
I'll tell you
is.
something else. Let me tell you something else. Their website, one of their original websites, was hosted by the Spanish Ministry of Defence. Now, what the hell is going? Why is the Spanish Ministry of Defence hosting a radical Islamist website?
Strange. What's your take on all this, Trevor? I don't know. What's the situation
when you say the
in Canada?
EDL, I learned about them. He's a British fella. His name's Michael Corrin. I used to watch his show. He's pretty popular in Canada here. I don't watch him anymore. Actually, I was supposed to be a guest on his show one time, but we had a bit of a falling out when he found out I was a libertarian. But I found out about the EDL through him. Now, he railed them. And this is going back, I guess, 2008, 2009. He had a lot of programs dealing with the EDL. And what is this? And my take on it from my understanding, they sound like the brown shirts of 1930s Germany. And then I start thinking, as we're talking here, Ben, you're telling me this stuff, and I'm thinking, wow, the timeline's 2009. It just kind of clicked in. I see this since 2008, the economic world collapse. I compare it to, and other economists have compared it to, like 1929, the economic collapse.
Yeah.
And what kind of political parties were forming in the 1930s? Well, what kind of political parties have been forming in the last few years? Like this EDL, to me, unless I'm mistaken, they sound like the new Nazi party, just under a different banner. So that's I don't really know. Other than the guy named Michael Corn, a British fella, the Canadian now, he hated the EDL.
Well, you bring up an excellent point, Trevor, in regard to the economic setting of the world right now, especially in the West, is the perfect setting to see the birth of these kind of organizations. I mean, history repeats itself, right? We've seen this in the past.
Exactly, and again, I wish we could all wake up and stop repeating these bloody pasts and why do all these economic crashes happen, and why do people feel the need to start these parties? Because somebody's fucking with them and wanting to control them.
What's your take?
So the EDL in Canada here, like, we don't hear too much about it other than from British Canadian journalists. So but they just sound like Nazis to me.
So what do you think about that, Ben? You think that has something to do with it? The economic situation is set up to kind of give birth to these kind of organizations, and then the powers that be will they're not going to stop it. They're going to help them flourish.
Well, definitely. I mean, there are a lot of parallels between the situation we have now and the situation 90 odd years ago. I'm not sure there's exact parallels. I mean, but it's true that the political movements, I mean, mainstream political parties are, of course, in the pockets of the elite. But, I mean, it turns out that a lot of these minority parties are as well. As Trevor's pointed out, they bring these guys in. And then it seems that certain circumstances, certain situations seem to be designed to encourage certain views within the public culture and consciousness that garner support for these organizations. And in this case, it seems to be we're being very, very much manipulated to hate Muslims,
right,
and to blame them, and through consequence, immigration, as we were talking about earlier, and that is being used. I mean, where it's going to go, I'm not sure. It's not a directly parallel situation with the Nazis.
I agree.
It's not just in Germany for a start. It's across the world.
I mean, there are very strong similarities, but I think you're correct. It's not an exact parallel.
But I mean, what's happening now is that Tommy Robinson, whatever he's called, is now part of a think tank, which seems to be it seems to have some very, very sinister links to various. It's a big subject. Someone on the Kent Freedom Movement was talking about it a little while ago. I didn't actually read everything they said, but it's been criticised a lot. I mean, there's a lot of people from within and inside and outside the Muslim community who've written open letters to newspapers saying that we believe this is just another establishment-backed attempt to divert attention from the main cause of radicalisation and extremism in Britain, the UK's disastrous foreign policy in the Muslim world, including its occupation of Muslim lands and its support for pro-Western Muslim dictators. And that's a very, very interesting point, because it seems that the Quilliam Foundation is not addressing that, and it doesn't address Israel either. It could be that there's the Mossad are behind it.
Look at the name, though. I mean, he's leaving the EDL, which stands for the English Defence League, right? Very kind of in your face. There's reeks of nationalism, you know, anti-foreign, all that stuff, and then there's the Quilliam. I mean, what does that word even mean?
Well, Quilliam is named after someone called Abdullah Quilliam, who was a 19th century British convert to Islam who founded the first mosque in Liverpool. Now, the thing about it is, I mean, what I think is that Tommy Robinson is still being used by this conspiracy. He's just been moved into a different, more subtle, maybe an outer rim of it. Do you know what I mean? He's been moved into a different part of it.
So
he's being groomed. To
do you think? Do you think, Ben, that Robinson is basically being hoodwinked, being used by the establishment, by the powers that be, as a pawn? And
he was used when he was in the EDL. Now he's still being used when now he's in Quilliam.
He's too blind or short-sighted to see it. He doesn't see the manipulation that's going on.
Yeah, I think he's not someone who's working for them directly. I mean, I don't think he is. He's, like I said, he doesn't come across as someone who's that sophisticated. He comes across as quite naive. There's something quite sort of ingenuous about him, And I don't think he's a bad guy. I mean, he doesn't like racists. He's very opposed to racism. He has black friends, people like that. He's spoken out against racism himself.
Right.
What he has been done, he's one of these people who has been put in a position in this very inflammatory situation that was stirred up deliberately by government psychological operations. He's the guy who's found his way or been put into a position where he's being used in this way to lead this as part of this kind of like contradiction, this force, this anger.
So radicalized Muslims in the UK it's big news, right? I mean, every city in the United Kingdom has a small Muslim population that's probably viewed by the majority of people as being radical. Am I way out there?
I mean, some people have the sense to see through it because, of course, we are now in contact with a lot of Muslims.
Sure.
I mean, as a hospital porter, I mean, Islam is probably the primary religion of the hospital portering service in Britain.
Not everyone thinks this way, but no. I would believe the majority does think.
Unfortunately, the majority of the native population now has been indoctrinated into this.
So let me ask. I want to get Trevor in on this. Now, I know that's going on in the UK. What's the situation along those tracks in Canada?
In Canada, yeah, Muslim bashing is here. I have contact with a guy, a very popular journalist in Canada. Actually, he was a South African, Ray Hurd. Good guy and everything, but some of his articles are like, well, this Muslim said that, and there is an anti-Muslim. They used to debate the burqa in Canada. Conservatives came out, every conservative TV show and radio show saying they shouldn't be wearing those things because you don't know if it's a man under there, and they don't know if they have bombs underneath. It's a very racist situation up here. Journalists in Canada will come out. It's conservative journalists will come out and bash anything they can, Islam, and anything. An Islamic person sneezes and they'll report it as that's a biological attack. I mean, it's really that bad up here with conservative.
Are there organizations similar to the EDL that have sprang into life in Canada?
No. We have more socialist groups that would come up, but there's no radical political parties in Canada. But I mean, I don't know. The media could be considered radical because they come out and it's whatever the Muslims, like I say, if they sneeze, the conservative media up here will report it as like a biological attack. So so Muslim bashing in Canada, it's pretty big. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I'm sure it happens in the United States also, but it really doesn't get reported much. The news organizations over here barely report anything to do with
your news is more probably Mexicans bashing Mexicans, I guess.
Not really. No, not really. It's not really a kind of singling out a racial or religious stereotype and saying you guys. We really don't see that in the media. And
it's strange how different countries have.
Yeah. I mean, I'm sure it happens. I'm sure
in Canada are almost the same.
Yeah, I'm sure there are places in the U.S. where this kind of nonsense goes on, but I really don't see it in the news here, or at least locally. I was saying to Ben earlier on before we started the show about Muslims and the burqa and all that stuff. And when I'm out and about, I do see a lot of Muslim people, and the only reason I know they're Muslim is because the chicks have a scarf on their head. But they're just regular people. They don't look, weird or bizarre. They're just normal, regular people shopping or buying groceries or doing whatever everyone else does. Whereas in the UK, Ben was saying that it's not uncommon to see someone with the black sheet on, covered head to toe.
Every time you go out in any urban centre, you'll probably see at least one woman wearing a full burqa.
I don't see that over here.
Canada, big time. Oh, you see
Really?
the hospitals. You see the full black. You hardly see their eyes.
Dude, I don't see that anywhere. I mean, I'm not traveling the width and breadth of the United States, and I'm sure there are places where this does happen. But here in Southern California, I've never seen it.
Well, unfortunately, I mean, there's calls. There's a lot of calls in some countries. In France, they've actually done this, and in Britain, they're trying to follow suit, and that is actually to legally ban it from public streets. Now, this is a very, very worrying development because it sets a very, very unusual legal precedent that has never been done before. The dictating of a dress code on a public highway is completely unknown in our country. Completely unknown.
Right.
I mean, I know in France they don't have this law, but in Britain we have the law. You have to cover up. You can't walk around naked, although the weather in this country hardly makes that. They need to enforce that. But
right.
But I mean, apart from that, you can wear whatever you like. You can walk down the street wearing a leotard and diver's flippers if you want. Of course, you'll get a lot of strange stares, but you won't get arrested by the police.
Right.
Now that's going to change. Now they want to change it so that you're not allowed to wear the burqa.
What's the rationale behind the banning of it, though? What's the thought process?
It's supposedly, I mean, it seems to be the idea that a lot of the feminists are in favour of it because they say it oppresses women, although the truth of the matter is, in France, the women have been actually up in arms about the fact that they're saying, no, we've chosen to wear this.
Right.
It's the government is patronising us and belittling us and saying, again, they have to step in and protect us and things like this. And then there's also the security issue. Trevor's brought that up, and this is what a lot of people in Canada are saying. They're saying, well, you never know who's under there because you can't see their face. And again, their face won't appear on CCTV. Oh, my God. Again, they're anonymous. We don't know who they are. The state has to know who everyone is.
Well, you could wear like I mean, it kind of opens up the door to go both ways, right? If you wanted to walk around the streets with a mask on, I mean, couldn't you argue then that, well, they do it, so why can't I?
No, exactly. The riot police have big visors on with masks, and it's like. But the thing about it is, I mean, really, if we choose to dress like that, why shouldn't we?
Sure. I agree.
Again, it's the imposition of a dress code on a public street, and it all comes back. People would never normally support this, but they are now because it's being attached to this Muslim.
Is it considered
burqas, bombing, stabbing?
Is it considered a religious garment, though, a religious statement?
Well, it's not actually. I mean, the burqa is actually not connected with Islam in any way. It only dates back to the 16th century. The caliphs of Baghdad invented it.
Okay.
The caliph would dress his wives and daughters in it because he was actually a status symbol.
Right.
And in fact, originally it was designed to be worn by men as well as women, and even the caliph himself would dress in it. And it was actually a sign. If you wore a burqa, it was a sign that you were a member of the aristocracy. So it's actually a status symbol. But
gotcha.
I really think, and I've studied this very carefully, that a lot of this new world order that we're facing is going to be built up around this idea, which I call the new Iron Curtain. That is, the world is going to be divided. There's going to be an Iron Curtain, just like the one that used to divide Europe, which Winston Churchill called the Iron Curtain descending across Europe. An Iron Curtain is going to encircle the world. It's going to be between the Third World and the more prosperous countries in the West. And it's something that's going to, firstly, it's going to be supported by many, many people. Because it's not just going to be a barrier between one part of the world and another. It's going to be internal barriers as well. You're going to, in order to enforce it, you're going to need to have an internal state structure, which is a lot more ruthless and cruel and draconian, in order to maintain this Iron Curtain. But I think that is where we're heading. It seems to be that's the direction the government are actually taking in order to bring in the New World Order.
Well, folks. Great conversation as usual. I want to thank Ben and Trevor for being on the show today. This has been a kind of hospital porter edition of the Mindset Podcast. But thank you so much. Great conversation. We had a great time today talking about these topics and discussing them freely, as you really don't get a chance to in regular life. I mean, that's the thing with this show and other shows out there, is that there are a lot of people out there with these thoughts in their head, but where do you go to hear about this? Are you alone? Are there other people out there like you? Well, today maybe you've discovered that, because we've talked about a lot of different topics. So let's discover where everyone can be found on the internet. Let's start with Trevor. Trevor, if people were going to find you online, where would they go?
You can go to eBay or Facebook page. I sell survival gear. It's called Bigfoot Mountain Survival Gear.
So it's if we fire up a browser and type in Bigfoot mountain survival gear, we'll find you.
I think so, yeah. Just
Awesome.
look on the satellites, government satellites. I'm out in the forest. I'm sure they're watching me. And
All right, awesome. Ben, where can you be found?
Me.
Yeah.
Oh, sorry, me. Hospital Porters Against the New World Order, HBANWO, HBANWO.blogspot.com, and of course Mindset Central.
Excellent. And also some great videos from Ben on YouTube. Go check those out. He just had one last week from the Probe. I meant to ask you about the Probe conference. I'm sorry, Ben, but we kind of ran out of time.
No worries.
Maybe
okay. It's all in the video.
Yeah, watch the
3-hour
video.
feature-length documentary all about the Probe conference.
Watch the video and you'll find out everything about it. All right, guys, we'll wrap it up here. I still have some stickers left. If anyone wants stickers, email me your address. I will mail them to you free of charge. Just let me know if you want them, and I'll send them out. But that kind of wraps it up for this week's edition of the Mindset Podcast. Thank you all so much for listening, and farewell, good brothers.